It is my delight to be here with you guys today. If we can jump right into it, have people already introduced themselves?
Not yet.
Perfect. So let me introduce myself and then pass the mic to each one of you so that we can get a brief introduction to the participants today. I'm Raphael Lozano Hammer. I'm a Mexican-Canadian artist who has been working for about 30 years in media art. One of my favorite stories is in 1994, I gave a talk in Mexico City and I showed VR and I showed internet art and I showed robotic work. And somebody said to me after the lecture, Raphael, your work is very nice, but it's not very Mexican. And from this moment on, I made it one of my life missions to try to bring together the idea that media art and experimentation with technology is not mutually exclusive with being Latin American. And I collected a number of experiences that were precedents and inspirations to a very nerdy history of the experimentation that has been taking place in Latin America for a while. We will talk about that in this panel, but I'd like to first introduce the different people who are here. So I'll pass the mic on to Martin, who, if you can briefly introduce yourself, go into the actual panel.
Thank you, Raphael, and thank you all of you for sharing time with here together. My name is Martin Honzig. I'm I'm coming from Austria. I'm representing Ars Electronica here. I'm a long-time member of this wetland Ars Electronica represents, and I has been in charge of the festival, the Pre-Ars Electronica, our export activities and our artistically related activities in our center, in our museum, and since the last year, I carry the title CCO of Ars Electronica. I am delighted and honored to be part of this round.
Thank you so much. I'd like to also introduce the other part of this, the initiation of this initiative, which is the Cisneros-Fontanals Foundation. And we have here Sergio Fontanella. Please introduce yourself, Sergio.
Hello, everyone. It's been a pleasure to be a part of the organization of this whole event with so amazing people, especially the full support of Ars Electronica and the Ars Electronica Festival. And my name is Sergio Fontanella. I'm Cuban American and art historian, and I am presently the Director of Operations of CIFO, the Cisneros-Fontanals, our foundation, based here in Miami, and right now all over the world. Thanks to you guys.
Thank you, Sergio. Okay, and now we're going to introduce, please, Rodrigo Alonso.
Okay, hi everybody. I am Rodrigo Alonso. I am researcher and professor at the University of Buenos Aires, and I specialize in art and new media in Argentina and in Latin America.
Thank you so much. Tanya Aedo, please.
I am very glad to be here. Thanks, Rafa. Thanks, CIFO Foundation, and of course, Ars Electronica. I'm Tanya Aedo. I'm a cultural practitioner, curator, and specialized also in the intersections between art, science, and technology in Mexico.
Thank you. Jose Carlos.
Hi, I'm Jose Carlos Mariategui, Peruvian, based in London, mostly, sometimes in Peru also. Researcher, writer, curator, as my colleagues in art, culture, and technology. I've been working on that for the last 25 years, like most of us. And I founded a small organization called ATA, Alta Tecnología Andina, which is devoted to creativity, technology, and innovation in Latin America.
Thank you so much. And finally, our Maria Fernandez, joining us from, I believe, Ithaca.
Yes, I am in Ithaca. My name is Maria Fernandez. I have a very long history of involvement with digital media arts since the 1990s or late 80s. something like that. I teach history of art at Cornell University.
Thank you so much, Maria. So with that brief introduction, trying to keep the biographies short because we have a lot of material to cover. To give people a little bit of context, I believe that it was about 10 years ago that Maria Fernandez brought some of the scholars that are in this panel together with others in an exploration of what technological experimentation has been in the region of Latin America. And one of the stories that came through in that colloquium, which was fascinating, was the story of Hercule Florence. And I want to mention this story just very briefly, because I think that it is a really poetic and practical explanation of the intersection of Latin America and experimentation with technology. As any Brazilian will tell you, photography was not invented by Niepce or by Talbot or by Daguerre in Europe. It was invented by a fellow called Hercule Florence. Hercule Florence was an illustrator that was tasked with classifying and illustrating the flora and fauna of Brazil in the very first Amazon exploration. Hercule Florence was a fast illustrator, a very good one, but he could not keep up with the diversity of the flora and fauna of Brazil. For centuries, we had known that a pinhole box would actually create an image, an upside down image of reality. And for centuries, we had known that silver salts were light sensitive. The first person to put the silver salts in a pinhole device, camera, was Hercule Florence. And he started capturing the flora and fauna of Brazil in using this new device, which is part of the story, which I love, is he called the device photography. So this is about 20 years before Niepce and Daguerre. And then what he did is he managed to capture all of this flora and fauna, bring it back to Europe, and reveal his photos to everybody in Europe who were enthralled for two reasons. One, the flora and fauna of Brazil. I mean, are you kidding me? This is unbelievable. And then this other capability of actually capturing light with an instant, this new technological device that allowed you to capture reality. Now, the story is significant because this invention of photography in Latin America ends with the fact that, of course, Florence did not have a fixative. So all of the photos that he presented in Europe actually disappeared with time. And we have no evidence that, in fact, photography was invented in Latin America. So this kind of mixture of this magical moment together with this development, to me, inspires what we're doing right here. For this first panel of the CIFO-Ars Electronica collaboration, we want to go over some of the processes or some of the precedents that have existed in technological development in Latin America, and ensure that, like or unlike Hercule Florence photography, they don't just disappear. So I'd like to call on Maria Fernandez first so that she can give us a brief introduction. We're going to speak about 10 minutes each, and then we will pass the mic. Maria, you can begin, please.
Okay, thank you, Raphael. First, I would like to thank the Cisneros-Fontanals Arts Foundation, Raphael Lozano Hemmer, and Sergio Fontanella for the invitation to participate in this panel. Ars Electronica has been a really important forum for Latin American artists who, over the years, have participated, exhibited their works in the festival, earned honorable mentions, and occasionally a golden Nika. I remember the first time I was in Ars Electronica, it was Alejandro Viñao who won the prize for music composition in 1992. And since, there has been a long period of engagement with Latin American art. In this brief presentation, what I will do is give you a very quick and very broad overview of the engagements of Latin American artists with technology in the 20th century and the first years of the 21st. So let me share my screen first. In fact, yes. So despite the impressive growth of Latin American media arts in the last 60 years, the history of these arts remains unstudied. The insufficiency of research in this area has to do in part with the historical tension between digital art in particular and the art world, and with totalizing stereotypes of Latin American underdevelopment that continue to perpetuate the marginalization of the region from notions of modernity. Rather than a uniform whole, there is a multiplicity of modernities, each with its own particularities. Because of the histories of colonization and imperialism, Latin Americans have been entangled with European and North American modernities since the 16th century. In the 19th and most frequently in the 20th, some artists employed modern technologies in their work, while others depicted visions of futures involving technologies real and imaginary, using, of course, traditional media. Many artists traveled and lived abroad and actively partook in international networks, which makes it very difficult to disassociate Latin American art from international and transnational artistic developments. In 1920s Mexico, estridentismo, arguably Latin America's first vanguard movement, was an experimental nexus for, this has to be minimized. Can you minimize? No, I guess not minimizing the window. Anyway, it was an experimental nexus for Latin American artists conscious of the changes that modern technologies pose to society. The estridentistas used radio and mass media for their works, for disseminating their works. Their visual and literary works bustle with images and sounds of radiators, airplanes, cinema, jazz, radio, telegraphs, automobiles, locomotives, and factories. Subsequently, the renowned muralists Diego Rivera, David Alfaro Siqueiros, and Jose Clemente Orozco, among many others, painted images of technologies including electric light, airplanes, microphones, telescopes, X-ray machines, and fictional cyborgian creatures such as these ones that you can see here, and this one in their murals. With these images, they communicated hopes and fears for the future. Such works signal the fascination that technology held for artists, but most importantly, they demonstrate that far from passive adopters, also they were invested in visualizing futures. Technologies and futures must be imagined before they are realized. After the Second World War, the art world witnessed a wealth of artistic productions in new mediums, materials, and technologies. During the 1940s and 1950s in Argentina, Gyula Kosice and Lucio Fontana created neon sculptures that preceded the development of neon art in the United States. In Brazil, the artist Abraham Palatnik exhibited his first kinechromatic work at the Sao Paulo Biennial in 1951. These devices consisted of a backlit plastic screen onto which he projected colors and forms. For this purpose, he used lights of varying voltages, colored electric wires, electrically controlled rotating cylinders, time switches, special lenses, and a prism. The effect was a light painting continuously transforming. Later in Paris, the artists Nicolas Schoeffer from Hungary and Frank Malina from the United States would independently create backlit devices with similar purposes. A number of Latin American artists residing in Paris in the 1960s and 70s, including the Argentines Julio Leparca and Marta Boto, made innovative kinetic and electronic sculptures and installations. In Buenos Aires, the Instituto Torcuato Di Tella supported artistic explorations of television, telex, radio, and audio recording, as did the Centro de Arte y Comunicación, founded in 1969. Both pioneered the development of systems art in Argentina. During the same decades in New York, the Chilean artist Juan Downing made electronically operated audiokinetic sculptures in collaboration with the engineer Fred Pitts. They employed electromagnets, radio, photocells, a Geiger counter, and tape recorders, among many other technologies, to make the sculptures interactive. Downey explained that he made these works because, quote, they imitate aspects of movement in life. Art, he said, is more concerned with thinking about what people experience than with producing objects. These values would be central to digital media in later decades. Computers were indispensable to the Brazilian artist Waldemar Cordeiro, who allegedly produced the earliest digital prints in the region. He worked in collaboration with the physicist Giorgio Moscati on an IBM 36044 in the physics department at the University of Sao Paulo in 1968. His work addressed a variety of subjects concerning the social impact of media. In the 1980s, some Brazilian artists made work using videotexto, a Brazilian version of the French Minitel system, which involved a terminal consisting of a screen, a keyboard, and a modem connected to remote services via telephone lines. In 1983, the Sao Paulo Biennial included the exhibition Arte y Videotexto, the title of which you see on the screen. The exhibition was curated by the Spaniard Julio Plaza. In the 1990s, Latin Americans, including Raphael Lozano Hemmer, Tania Fraga, Gilberto Prado, Giselle Bagelman, Eduardo Katz, Mariela Yeregui, Brian McKern, among many others, made significant contributions to digital media art with NetArt, sound art, robotics, virtual reality, and bioart projects. The mailing list NetTime Lat, hosted by NetTime, and now discontinued, was instrumental for networking artists from the region. Institutions such as the Centro Multimedia in Mexico City, Itaú Cultural in Sao Paulo, Brazil, Alta Tecnología Andina in Peru, and in the 2000s, the Fundación Telefónica in Argentina and the Laboratorio de Arte Alameda in Mexico City facilitated the education of artists as well as their projects in electronic and digital media. In the 2000s, biennials and gallery spaces proliferated, and so did digital and new media art. Especially NetArt became very attractive to Latin American artists. This is an exhibition of 2007, Colombian NetArt. Brian McKern's NetArt Latino database provided an archive of this work. Also, the Brazilian artist Regina Celio Pinto's Museum of the Essential and Beyond That exhibited digital art from the region. In Mexico, since 1995, the artist Pedro Mayer provided a forum for photography and digital imaging in his website Zone Zero, which is still active. At present, many artists eloquently challenge our received ideas of modernity with decolonial and environmental projects, some of which you will see in the next panel. Paula Gaetano Adi from Argentina, for example, invites us to unlearn robotics and to create a transmodern pluriversal robotics mindful of indigenous and colonial histories, as well as popular traditions. Despite all of these developments, many works from Latin American media art from the last 30 years have been lost. As our current commercial system is built upon the idea of planned obsolescence, continuously, works of art cease to function as technologies become obsolete. Despite reasonable arguments to the contrary, loss may not be inevitable. I hope that collectively we can devise ways to preserve this art. In closing, last but not least, I would like to thank the participants of this session for their fundamental contributions to the study and dissemination of electronic and digital media art. I would also like to acknowledge the work of curators Carla Hasso, the late Priamo Lozada, the artist Andrea Di Castro, Eduardo Katz, Andrés Burbano, and the scholars Arlindo Machado, Simón Ostov, Ana Teresa Fabris, Daniel Quiles, Claire Taylor, Julieta González, Rachel Price, Karen Benesra, Claudia Patterson, and Jens Hauser, among many others. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maria. Thank you so much for creating a first framework. I should mention that the colloquium I was speaking about in Cornell generated a list called the Inter-American Timeline of Art, Culture, and Technology Experimentation. It's called Itacate. And this is a really beautiful repository of different lists that we each had from different countries about different kinds of precedents. Everything from the first woman to ever pilot a plane was a Cuban, Aida da Costa, to the first usage of video cameras in closed circuit interaction with the public was Marta Minujín in Argentina. And this is a list that I think that I'm not going to mention now the specific details because they may be presented by our next presenters. I'd like to give my word now to Rodrigo Alonso, who was, in fact, the person who first introduced me to Cosiche, to Sul Solar, to all of the traditions that happen in Argentina, the very, very early experimentation. So, Rodrigo, if you could please do your presentation now. Thank you.
Thank you, Raphael, for your presentation. Thank you, CIFO and Ars Electronica for inviting me to be part of this panel to present a brief moment in Argentinian art media history. Let me share this. So my presentation is going to be about happenings and mass media in Buenos Aires. And it starts like this. Okay. Towards 1964, sorry. Towards 1964, happenings were beginning to multiply in the Argentinian art scene, promoted by the daring of some young artists attentive to international art trends. In October of that year, a singular happening took place. The images show a truck that unfolds mattresses, buckets of paint, and chickens. Then the eruption of horses carrying cans of paint led by a woman. Later, a rock band appears playing their music, but a young man begins to wrap the members with ribbons until they are paralyzed. Finally, the place is filled with balloons, and a couple of bodybuilders set out to make them explode in front of a serious audience, dressed in a very formal way, completely bewildered. Sorry. Sorry. I'm having a problem with. Okay. sorry. The promoter of all this is a 21 years old woman. Her name is Marta Minujín. Here we see her enjoying the debacle that she has just executed. She is behind of one television camera that has recorded the entire event and has broadcasted in real time to the under-noticed viewers of a public program. Undoubtedly, without knowing it, Minujín was performing the first happening broadcasted live on television in history. Like many pop artists, Marta Minujín was fascinated with the mass media. She disdained traditional artistic formats and believed that art should be a vital, immediate, and contemporary experience. That same year, 1964, she had won the prestigious prize of the Instituto Torquato di Tela in Buenos Aires with an installation of multicolored mattresses that invited the public to relax and enjoy. Its title was Roll Up and Live. Now, let me say. Sorry, but I'm having a problem with. Sorry, I don't find my PowerPoint. The following year, I will not be looking at the PowerPoint, isn't it?
We are looking at it, just so you know.
Yes,
it is visible here.
It's freeze, isn't it?
No, it's all good. We're right now seeing the mattresses from 62 and 64.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, I'm having a problem with this. I'm gonna do something. Okay. We're gonna see this. Okay. The following year, together with Rubén Santantonin, she designed a mega installation that invited the viewers to experience unusual and playful spaces. Its name, La Menezunda, a word that means something like confusion in Buenos Aires slang, warned of what could be found inside. A neon corridor, rooms with revolving walls, a couple in bed, an icy room you could only get out if it guessing a number on a dial telephone. It was near the entrance, there was a rare device. Spectators were invited to climb a ladder to find 3 televisions, in one of which they could see their own image produced by a closed-circuit TV. It was March 1965, and the portapacks weren't available yet. In fact, as far as we know, Nam June Paik received his in October of that year. But Minujín, who had already had previous experience with television, managed to borrow a camera from a TV channel to carry out this experiment. Again, probably unknowingly, she was making the first CCTV artwork in history. The most curious thing about this is that she was not particularly interested in technology, or rather, she still didn't know. Because after her trip to New York that same year and the knowledge of Marshall McLuhan's theories, everything was going to change. Starting in 1966, she immersed herself fully in technological research using all the means of communications at her disposal. In the realization of simultaneity in simultaneity, a happening that was to occur coincidentally in Buenos Aires, New York, and Berlin in collaboration with Alan Capro and Volvo Stel, Minujín created a media environment with televisions, radios, films, slides, speakers, photographs, and telephones in order to highlight the transformation of the environment produced by the latest technologies. The project included the use of the early bird satellite in the interconnection of the three cities, but that did not happen. Would Marta Minujín have created the first artwork by satellite in history? The objective of simultaneity in simultaneity was to give back the event's participants their own images and sound mediated in real time. But this wasn't impossible with the means she had. That is why she decided to record the attendees in photography, films, and sound recordings in one day and return those records to them through television, speakers, radios, and slides in a second session, creating a kind of closed multimedia circuit deferred in time. But there were still some technical problems. How to get participants to appear on televisions and radio? Minujín had no better idea than to ask a television channel and 2 radio stations to broadcast the images and sounds to the air so that they would reach the participants of the event gathered at the Titela Institute. What have the viewers and listeners who unintentionally encountered these records on the air have understood? Would they think they were inside another happening? Finally, in 1967, in the framework of Expo 67 in Montreal, Minujín was able to carry out this project more adequately. But as expected, more media were incorporated in the new version. Here we have some images of circuit super heterodyne. The work in question. Participants were chosen through a survey published in a local newspaper that the interested parties had to fill out and sent by email. A computer chose 3 groups of people by affinity. The 3 groups interacted with each other through different technologies that allowed them to observe themselves, and be observed. It was a very complex work which involved numerous levels of information and media with effective closed circuits, multiple interactions in real time, and constant calls to its protagonist to reflect on the experience they were living. As Marta Minujín immersed herself more and more in technical complexities, a group of young artists from Buenos Aires meditated on the impact of mass media on reality, art circuit, and aesthetics. Encouraged by these reflections, in July 1966, they published a manifesto with the title of Art of the Mass Media, in which they expressed, in mass media civilization, the public is not direct contact with cultural facts, but is informed about them through the media. The mass audience does not see, for example, an exhibition, does not witness a happening or a football match, but sees its projections on the newscast. In any case, it is not in the interest of consumers of information whether it is carried out or not. The only thing that matters is the image that the media builds on this artistic event. We intend to build a work within those media. We intend to deliver to the press the written and photographic report of a happening that has not happened. This baggage report will include the names of the participants, an indication of where and when it was performed, and a description of the show that is feigned to have occurred, with photos taken of the alleged participants in other circumstances. Thus, in the way of transmitting the information, in the way of realizing the not existent event, in the differences that arise between the various versions of the same event that each issuer makes, the meaning of the work will appear. A work that begins to exist at the moment in which the conscience of the viewer constituted, as already concluded. The work was finally performed in August 1966. Various newspapers and magazines published the information of the false happening, provided by the artist, and they had to retract them when they learned of the deception. This work is known as with the name of The Happening of For a Deceased Wild Boar. But the reflections of this group of art and the mass media did not end here. As a consequence of their actions, they wondered, could that piece carried out in the media be a happening? Although it was an ephemeral event and only persists in the memory of the public, shouldn't a happening be participatory and spontaneous? Guided by these premises, they give shape to a kind of production that they call the anti-happenings, and that consisted of reenacting famous happenings based on their description of the media. Among others, local versions of Meet Joy by Karol Schneemann and Autobodies by Claes Oldenburg were performed from scripts and records, mostly textual, obtained from different media. What is interesting here is what happens when these reproductions are in turn reproduced by the media as a singular action in the absence of the reference. Finally, another important moment in the artistic research with the media is the work of, here's the media covered of these reenactments, and we are going to talk about the Frontera group to finish. Finally, another important moment in the artistic research with the media was the work of the Frontera group, a group that lasted a very short time, but long enough to participate in the information exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. The group was founded in 1969 with 2 visual artists, a television worker, and an art critic specialized in semiotics. Its objective was to investigate the aesthetic possibilities of the mass media working with the new technology of video. That same year, they made the installation Specta, for which they were invited to participate in the aforementioned exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art. The work was composed of 2 spaces and situations. First, a person entered a kind of mini television studio where he or she was asked to answer questions. He or she was asked questions, and his or her answers were recorded in privacy. When the person left, she or he found a set of television in which she or he could see him or herself answering the questionnaire, and also see the rest of the public present in that room reproduced on other monitors through a closed-circuit television. Here, the work with the mass media pursues a rather sociological and semiotic aim. The main points that are the constructions of, The main points are the construction of messages, their private and public existence, and the possible linguistic nature of art. These episodes in the history of Argentinian art in the mid-60s reveal the extent to which the growing relationships between art and communication technologies were fertile fields of creation and intense arenas of debate in Argentina. Sorry about technical problems.
Thank you so much, Rodrigo. This is, to me, it's very fascinating to mention Minujín for a number of reasons. One of them, especially as we're talking about new media, for Latin Americans, the word new is very problematic, because if you think about this work that Minujín was doing with early interventions of TV, the idea that I like is, first of all, that the pioneer of video art to an extent is a Latin American woman, so it breaks some stereotypes about where that comes from. The second thing that I'm interested about is the idea that this is over 56 years ago. So we're talking about 5 decades of experimentation with live cameras trained on the public. So to pretend that this is new is kind of disingenuous. So I really like to quote that. But there's yet another thing that I think is fascinating, and that's that the birth of a lot of media art in Latin America had to do with this performative and with these happenings. It is, for long, I felt that sometimes people classify media art as visual art, when in fact it's more performance-based. It's an event that happens over time with a succession of participants. And so I think that all of this is already sort of enclosed in the early Minujín work. And I'm really happy that now, you know, she's continuing to produce, and she is, people like Lynn Hirschman or people like her are now getting the recognition that they deserve, not just from places like CIFO-Ars Electronica, who have always looked out for, you know, important artists like them, but now more generally. But I think it's not so known what Minujín was doing this 56 years ago. People are now associating to the Parthenon that she just made a documenta, as opposed to this early, more electric or electronic presentations. Thank you so much, Rodrigo Alonso. Next, I would like to hand over the mic to Tanya Aedo, who is in Mexico. So just to recap, you're in Buenos Aires right now, right, Rodrigo? Okay, and Tanya, you're in Mexico City?
Yes.
Perfect. So please, you go ahead.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for your great presentations before. I will be drawing a lot from them, Maria and Rodrigo, and also yes, want to mention the amazing, incredible exhibition Rodrigo has curated recently of geometry and art in Latin America. I imagine this large body of work and inquiries in the field of media art in Mexico as a constellation or as a complex web of interactions among practices and knowledge, singular and specific, but always in connection with the diverse media art scenes in Latin America and in the world, and linked, of course, with a long tradition of experimental practices, as we've been seeing in the previous presentation, and also something very important, with a critical stance towards the idea of progress and rationality in technology since the beginning. I also like to think of media art as a wide variety of practices emerging from the interactions between art and technology, or art, science, and technology, but most of all as an intensive interaction with knowledge production. It has a transdisciplinary and or a transmedia or intermediality nature from the beginning. And in a way, it is also a symptom of that which has been named an epistemological turn in art, and in response also to the enormous intensifications in knowledge in the 20th century. So this is a brief drawing or diagram of the curatorial approach I'm trying to experiment in the present, and in relation with the current pandemics and with the current the cultural mutation that is needed in order to be able to deal with the climate crisis. So I'm thinking of media art as an enormous repository of knowledge and also of warnings, and a kind of device, or this imaginary repository, a kind of device that can lead us to entropic, negentropic processes towards the sustenance of life, or and warnings to see when we are going to an entropic drive like we are now, with extraction practices. So I want to call to this presentation two pieces, or two, the Poema Colectivo Revolución, a piece of 1981, a piece or a project that was imposed by Colectivo Tres, very linked to the Grupos generation, or a generation of groups, linked also to the political movement of 1968, and a project that was inspired by the 1979 Sandinista uprising in Nicaragua, where this Colectivo Tres from Mexico City sent this open call to the world, and it started a very interesting process in mail art. It also was a piece that was almost unknown, but now is been continuously referred, and it has an exhibition in 2020 at the Isla, this new space and academic instance in New York that is supporting research on Latin American practices, and also a very important agent in all these conversations, Ulises Carrion, an artist that lived from 1941 to 1989, and I think Ulises Carrion can be is emblematic in this sense, in the sense that it was largely unknown for the establishment, but quite known for and quite a reference for sound artists, video artists, and experimental poetry in Mexico. And now, what I think is very important is the way that all the attention that Ulises Carrion is having now, and I think that in a way this his exclusion was due to canon as a device for exclusion, but also this exclusion device provokes very interesting processes, as it is the reason to create or expand to alternative scenes, and that was exactly what Ulises Carrion did. I link a lot the figure of Ulises Carrion and Poema Colectivo Revolución as a very important symptoms, and of course they are at the same time quite linked to the avant-garde movement, studentism that Maria referred to in her presentation, and two pieces from this period, TSH, or Telephone Without Wires, Teléfono Sin Hilos, by Manuel Mapres Arce, and the poem, inalambric poem in 13 Messages by Quintanilla. Also, this is quite linked to the sound art scene in Mexico that I think it's very important, and it's yes, it has been an enormous agent to the development of media art practices in Mexico. This is Manuel Maples Arce. These are two books by Quintanilla, Radio, where the poem is held, and Avión. So, and this is Ulises Carrion, a video art piece. Also, Ulises Carrion is quite linked to conceptual and post-conceptual practices in Mexico, and I think it's very important. And that is why I use the categories of transmediality, transdiscipline or cross-disciplinary practices, and also intermediality, because Ulises Carrion trajectory started as a writer, and he was established writer in Mexico City, but he flew to Europe, to Amsterdam, and founded this amazing project, Other Books and So, and his practices are also linked to archiving, yes, I think, and yes, as I said, to sound art. These are some of the examples of the Poema Colectivo Revolución, and this is a sample of a piece and a sample of the page that they sent to the world in their open call. I want to name just quickly Aparato Sci-Fi. This is an interesting project relating science fiction. I think in a way science fiction is an ancestor of new media practices, of intersections between art, science, and technology, from the point of view of cross-disciplinarity, or from the point of view of the interest that artists have since a long time ago with the knowledge and knowledge production. and quite linked to this idea that something as an epistemological turn is happening now. No? So Aparato SIFI, you can find it very quickly, is a research, but also acts as an experimental piece, including science fiction pieces. And the first one is the Primero Sueño, or the first dream, or the dream, a poem by Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz from 1692. And a piece that is now being regarded as proto-science fiction because of her, she narrates in this large poem a dream where she goes and projects the stars and the planets, and she had all this knowledge of her time put in this project. This is Aparato SIFI. You can find it, and the project is includes poems or pieces from the 16th century all the way to before the Second World War started, because of course that was a huge transformation for the idea of science fiction or proto-science fiction. And between the Rio Bravo or the Bravo River and the Suchiate River, which are the limits of Mexico as a nation. And here I just want to mention that, as Rafa said, and this idea of Latin America, and as well as the idea of Mexico, we are a set of many nations enclosed arbitrarily or almost arbitrarily between two lines. So that's what I also think this project Aparato SIFI is very interesting in that sense. I would like to address two landmarks or two milestones in science and technology in Mexico. One is the writing of the paper Behavior, Purpose, and Technology by Mexican physiologist Arturo Rosenbluth, and also Norbert Wiener and Julian Bigelow. This paper was very important for the development of cybernetics, and also, as we know, many concepts which are super important right now as circular causality, and many concepts that were very instrumental in the developing of technology, digital technology as well. And plasmogeny, also another milestone in biology. If you look now into biology, molecular biology or synthetic biology textbooks, you would find plasmogeny, this project by Alfonso Luis Herrera, that is regarded now as a precedent of protocells and molecular biology. Now that's why I like constellations, because I can do a giant leap. I don't know how is my time. Just you stop me, Rafa, if I'm.
Keep going.
I want to mention Polvo de Gallina Negra, a piece by, a collective formed by Maris Bustamante and Mónica Mayer, and this piece. Madre por un día, or Mother for a Day, that they did in Mexican TV, live TV. It's also, I think it's very important the relation that not just video art, but the use of television and in relation with feminist practices and with performance. And of course, the work of Paula Weiss, definitely a pioneer in video art. She lived from 1947 to 1990. Paula Weiss has been recognized in Mexico, and of course, also Maris Bustamante and Mónica Mayer. But yes, as we all know, this is work that is in need of much broader research and attention. And this is another giant leap. I'm mentioning these two exhibitions because they are related to Ars Electronica, and we will have in the next panel Tanya Kandiani, 5 variations of phonic circumstances and a pause. It was an exhibition curated by Carla Hasso in 2012 that in 2013 won a Golden Nika for the whole exhibition. So I want to link here this exhibition and media art with curatorial practices in Mexico, Carla Hasso and Priamo Lozada, and their relationship with Arlindo Machado, with Jorge Laferla, with Rodrigo Alonso, with all of you here. And Dynamic Imposition was an exhibition curated by Carla, but also by Gerfried Stocker and Manuela Pfaffenberger from Ars Electronica in 2010. And it was an exhibition that included artists from Latin America that Carla, as a curator, thought they should be in Ars Electronica's archive. This is an image of the amazing exhibition of Tanya Kandiani. And this is Solar by Rejane Cantoni and Leo Crescenti, which was presented as part of the exhibition in Mexico. And to finish, I want to mention also Plantas Autofotosintéticas, a project by Gilberto Esparza that won also the Ars Electronica Award. I forgot to put the year, but it should be like 2013, or I owe you the date. But interspecifics is collective. Just to mention a link between these younger generation and their spreading of knowledge and of their practice, because they have a quite interesting practices. They link artificial intelligence to biology, and they are right now doing a residency at Ars Electronica. I think I'm done.
Thank you so much, Tanya.
Thank you.
Really appreciated expanding the subject of media art into, sort of categories of knowledge and interdiscipline. It's also this kind of vocación experimental, this idea of research and experimentation as the fundamental part of what we're doing with in this kind of artistic practice. So we will have an opportunity to discuss a little bit of that, but we'll pass the mic right away to Jose Carlos because we're running a bit late. So Jose Carlos, welcome.
Hello, Rafa, and everyone. Thanks. I think you see my presentation, no?
We see a blank page right now.
Right now?
Blank page, still blank page. Now a cursor.
Now?
Now we see a cursor. It looks like an early NetArt piece.
That's lovely. Hold on one second.
We're here to talk about conceptual art, not to do conceptual art.
No.
No. It's a white page.
That's weird. And so hold on one second. I think I know what happened.
While you try and figure that out, Jose Carlos, maybe we can. Do you want to go on to the next person while you figure that out?
Yeah, I mean, I hope to solve it in a second.
Oh, okay, then we wait for you.
Oh, I mean, go to the next person so I can do it fast. But yeah, I don't know why. I tried it before, but I don't know why it's now not working.
Okay, well, while you're trying to figure it out, let me give some context for the listener. about several months ago, I was approached by Ella Cisneros, the head of the Cisneros-Fontanals Foundation, and I have been part of CIFO's board of directors for quite a few years. And for those who don't know, I mean, Sergio is going to give us a brief introduction to CIFO in a minute. But basically, it's an incredible organization that has been supporting the production and presentation of art from Latin America, from, you know, pretty much most regions, but CIFO tends to be one of the only recourses for support that, say, somebody in Guatemala or Honduras might have, so Bolivia, to present these works internationally. And one of the things that I noted is that a lot of the work that CIFO Foundation had been doing was, you know, covering a lot of different practices in contemporary visual art and performance art in Latin America. But I was looking at entire generations of artists who were working with viruses or robots or biotechnology or blockchain that were not being captured by CIFO Foundation. So Ella Cisneros approached, you know, the subject, and because I am a nerd that straddles both the media art world and the contemporary art world, I felt that it was important to bring them together with Ars Electronica so as to not to reinvent the wheel. I find that Ars Electronica is a site of intense research in these fields. And as we know from the presentation of Tanya right now, and also from Maria, there has been a lot of precedents of Latin American work being presented in Linz. So to connect these two worlds is what I would call a normalization, that media art should have its role and its play and its language, but it should also be connected to what's happening in contemporary art, and that there is a good contamination between, not that these two sides are so clearly cut, but we're here because we're hoping that these things can be normalized. In other words, that media art can be considered another of the established, you know, sort of branches of contemporary art practice and research. And I think that Jose Carlos is ready.
Yeah, I'm ready. Yeah,
Okay.
You see now what it says, cybernetics in Latin America.
We're ready.
Okay. Thanks. I just want to add something that well, I mean, I was hearing all the fantastic presentations, but I just wanted to say that when Tanya was mentioning the work of Gilberto, which actually won the Golden Nick in 2015, it reminded me to another very important precedent, which is the Vida Prize from Telefonica Foundation, which was founded by Raphael. Some of us, we were jury members for several versions, and there was a grant for Latin American and Hispanic productions. Plus, I think the first time Gilberto won a prize was there. So, I mean, there were also several initiatives that nurtured in Latin America and that then went global. And that's also with Paula Gaetano, for example. So, I mean, that's just a brief and thanks Rafa, CIFO, and Ars Electronica for the invitation. And I'm glad to share this panel, as I was saying, with close friends, close and good friends. What I'm gonna talk is a little bit briefly about the topic that I've been researching for some time, which is cybernetics and its connection with culture and artistic practices in Latin America, which cannot be disentangled from the other scientific research computational practices which through local and international collaborations influenced and contributed to the development to the overall subject. And what I aim with this is to provide a vision that cybernetics in Latin America should be seen as a conceptual framework, which acted as an operator, contributing to new cultural, political, and social models, pursuing the construction of even of national projects. So following, I think Raphael will love that, but following Raphael's reference to the birth of photography in Mexico, Tanya also mentioned, I would state also that cybernetics was born in Mexico. As Tanya said, Arturo Rosenbluth, a Mexican neurophysiologist, was working at Harvard Physiology Laboratory with Walter Cannon to propose a chemical theory of synaptic transmission in the central nervous system. During his stay in Boston, Rosenbluth built a very close relationship with Norbert Wiener, the mathematician, and together they launched a series of seminars on the operation of control systems and engineered systems and in living beings. In 1943, along with Wiener and Julian Bigelow, and it is very important to say, the paper is mainly authored by Rosenbluth, not by Wiener, not by Bigelow. They wrote this paper, which Tanya also mentioned, Behavior, Purpose, and Teleology, which was considered by American cultural anthropologist Margaret Mead as one of the first great papers on cybernetics before the book of Wiener. The paper had two main goals. One was to define the behaviorist study of natural events and classify behavior, and second, to stress the importance of the concept of purpose. And drawing on the physiological experiments of Rosenbluth, which were done in Mexico, along with Wiener's and Bigelow's wartime research. So the papers propose a general and unified classification of behavior, as well as a description of purposefulness and the character of self-correcting mechanisms through the study of both machines and living organisms. Rosenbluth was also co-member of these very famous Macy conferences, which set the foundations for a general science of the workings of the human mind. And I must say that Rosenbluth, in a way, is unfairly forgotten for his seminal contributions. He had to decline being hired at Harvard, in part because I think he was obliged to give up his Mexican nationality, but partly also because of his remote Jewish origin. And back in Mexico, he founded in 1961 the Center for Research and Advanced Studies of the National Polytechnic Institute of Mexico. So I think that's also a very interesting story. But if we move a little bit, we think also about art and cybernetics. There are many, but I want to showcase briefly two very important pioneering exhibitions in Latin America. One is Art and Cybernetics. It was in 1968, in which Jorge Glusberg, a founder, an entrepreneur, an art critic that founded the Center for Art and Communication in Buenos Aires, mostly known as the CAIC. In 1969, he opened this Art and Cybernetics show at the Bonino Gallery, inspired in a way by his visit to Cybernetic Serendipity at the Institute of Contemporary Arts in London, but also of taking into account the visit that he made also in 1969 to Japan, where he secured the participation of the people from the computer technique group, the CTG, collective of art and engineering students. So back in Buenos Aires, Glusberg set up a multidisciplinary research group on art and cybernetics, which brought together artists, designers, along with engineers, and organized a seminar that gave artists the access to computers and explore their creative possibilities. Now, I mean, here are some images of this IBM 1130 computer, the Model 2C running Fortran. Fortran is going to be very present in the 60s, and two automatic drawing machines or plotters equipped with ballpoint pens converted the tabulated digital information to a graphic format. In addition, there was another seminar on information approach that was, among others, Manuel Sadowski was present, who was also a very influential mathematician, a computer pioneer, who implemented one of the first computer for research and education in Argentina, a Ferranti computer, an English Ferranti computer nicknamed Clementina. And there were some local artists that participated in the show: Luis Fernando Benedit, Antonio Berni, Ernesto Deira, among others. Interestingly, after Buenos Aires, Art and Cybernetics traveled to Cordoba. It was very easy to build. I mean, it was very flexible. And they traveled to Cordoba, to Santa Fe, to Tucumán in Argentina, but also to Montevideo in 1970 and to Lima, but also a version of it traveled to Minneapolis, to San Francisco, to New York, and seems also that it went to London and to Tokyo. So I mean, this is one project, and the other that in a way was mentioned by also in the previous presentation was by Maria was the Electronica exhibition and the work of Valdemar Cordeiro. This project was organized in Sao Paulo at the Museum of Brazilian Art, Fundação Armando Álvares Penteado, and it was in March 71. And Valdemar Cordeiro was an artist, an art critic that after having been actively participant in the concrete art movement in the 50s, he proposed a new configuration understood as what he defined as a semantic concrete art, which in his view implied a leap in relation to the historical concrete art, in the conviction that his works are constructing new spaces and new meanings. Cordeiro's Artionika presented interdisciplinary works inspired by psychology, convergent computing used in the arts, but also highlighting the complexities of the mechanical and electronic reproductions, and where information tends to be lost or reduced. He talked a lot about, I mean, he had a manifesto where the information as such was very important. For this, I mean, he followed philosopher and psychologist Gregory Bateson, where he asserts that the change of communication is the change of information. So for this exhibition, he worked together with an engineer, with Giorgio Moscati from the University of Sao Paulo, and they worked with an IBM 360 with 32 kilobytes. And that's how they relied on algorithms and mathematical principles to create a new visual gestalt, let's say. We also highlighted the democratizing potential of telematic arts. Quite interestingly, these two exhibitions relied on collaboration with scientists, engineers, and both were based in reproducible media, such as computer printouts. So, which also permitted an efficient and inexpensive diffusion model, which was going to be used by the CAIC in Buenos Aires in several traveling shows for during the 70s. So now moving a little bit more to conceptual art, and what I in a way are several computer models and how they are connected to conceptual art, but also to other practices such as, for example, choreography. There was this period in which the cybernetic approach was already being applied to many creative practices, and perhaps something that was interesting was that perhaps the first computer-generated choreography for multiple dancers was done by Francisco Sagasti, who just finished a brief mandate as our Peruvian president, by the way. But it was in 1967. He was still a young Peruvian engineer. He was studying at Penn State University, and along with colleagues, a computer and a computer program, they developed a computer program to generate dance sequences for a choreography to be performed on stage. The computer choreography program was decoded in the Penn State University lab in Fortran 4 once more, with an IBM 360 with 1 megabyte of memory in this case, and was based on a set of instructions about the positions of 6 dancers on a stage performance for any number of musical measures or independent time segments. Something also very interesting is that using a random number generator and a set of instructions, the program choose the dancers' positions on the stage, comparing them to the position of the previous dancer. So a set of computer printouts show the position of each dancer with one column for the time measure and another for the number assigned on a hexagon. The computer generated dance was put on stage on March 14, 1968. And this is perhaps one of the most early attempts of combining computer-generated displacements, general directions for a choreographer, and dancer responses to what it's in essence a spatial score, revealing the benefits of the collaborative creative process, and let's say using choreographic ideas to augment the possibilities of choreography. For Sagasti, the objective of the computer-generated choreography was to show that computers could help to devise jobs, in this case dance, more effectively. He was an engineer. So in a way, the experiment also suggests that no matter how sophisticated a computer program is, it would never replace the choreographer, intuiting a potential collaboration always between computer scientists and choreographers. It's interesting to say that Sagasti's technological accomplishments and research was complemented 5 years later with the work of Brazilian artist and choreographer Ana Lívia Cordeiro, who between 73 and 76 developed instructions to coordinate the performance of 9 dancers organized in a 3x3 matrix. Also coded in Fortran 4, this performance called M3x3 and its resulting video documentation was made in high black and white contrast, merging scenes and dancers and movements were in a way this mechanical project, this program resulted in a criticism to the computer society, but also in the predetermined and underdetermined elements that are liberating and limiting the creative practice of the performers. No, so M3x3 open this discussion about the binomial situation of freedom versus planning that is present nowadays in our society. I want to finish the examples with Teresa Burga. Teresa Burga was a Peruvian multimedia artist whose conceptual works from the late 60s and 70s positioned her as a multimedia, as a pioneer in media art, in information-based art and multimedia installations. So Burga dived into the vast array of possible combinations of information provided by disciplines such as information theory and cybernetics, which influenced her early interest in conceptual experiments as means of regulation, control, standardization, and profiling. So her work elicited an early critique, which today falls in the sphere of the massive use of information processing and analysis tools for data mining, in a way. Autorretrato Estructura Informe, Self-Portrait Structure Report, 9672, was an installation first presented in 1972 at the American Cultural Center in Peru, in Lima. It was based on the close analysis of Burga's own corporeal data through a series of diagrams, medical examinations performed on the same day, June 9th, 1972. The installation was divided in 3 sections: the face report, the blood report, and the health report, aiming through a scientific approach of herself to narrow down different types of personal information into testable and depersonalized sources of data. So in face report, 1 front and 2 sided views, photographs were printed on graph paper on which the different parts of her face were meticulously measured and annotated to establish relationships between facial features. As part of this face report, she also drafted a series of line drawings, which in a way are a sort of topographic rendering on a 1-to-1 scale of her face front view. In the health report, the information included 2 signal analysis sets, an electrocardiogram and a phonocardiogram. So Burga here transforms this data into light and sound signals through an emitting device created during her time in studying in Chicago. And finally, the blood report, which showed biochemical analysis of her own clinical trials, as well as objects representing the different components of the blood, which with several indications of value traces and found in the test. So Burga complements these reports with visual structures like mind maps, organizing information belonging from each other of the experiments. And in a way, these are also preparatory schemes as part of the exhibition setup. Along with the reports, once more, visual structures and graphic compositions were based, and they were aiming in transforming information from reports into a visual and auditory stimuli. Burga dived into the vast array of possible combinations of information provided by disciplines such as information theory, as I was saying. And once more, this is perhaps one of the early discussions, which today maybe refer to what we call the quantify itself. But Burga's work was not just within conceptual art. This is something very interesting. She also worked for many years at the National Customs Administration in Peru, a government agency where she designed one of the first information systems during the 70s, which made similar structures. This is part of the work. She made very similar structures to the ones that she did for her conceptual artworks, but that ended up in a software system. This type of work is very much connected with the history of cybernetics. This is the software system, which still was used until the 80s. It was reprogrammed in Windows. And this is interesting because there is a history of cybernetic management, which in Latin America had also a very fertile ground. The most well-known case was CyberSyn in Chile during the government of Salvador Allende, conceived by British cybernetician Stafford Beer. But there were also several endeavors in Venezuela, in Peru, in Argentina that will require further discussion. I'm not going to talk about that, but which were looking to generate a profound social transformation and fostering national projects in which popular participation was fundamental. So just to wrap up, I'm trying to provide a very brief and short historical account of the significance and dynamic role played by Latin America by depicting this pioneering artistic and scientific work connected to cybernetics. But as we can see from the above project, collaboration had also been key to promote the dialogue and influence exchange. But whenever we develop works based on art, science, and technology, there are also cultural and social considerations that are not minor and that require more interdisciplinary approach. So networks, as the ones that Tanya was mentioning, are fundamental in Latin America as a way to know about ourselves, but also to establish collaboration with other spaces and hemispheres. And furthermore, such interdisciplinary approach exemplifies an interest in humankind, in human dignity, a voice that brings us closer to this porous of time, which is often ignited by a group of people that put an experiment, set up an exhibition, or develop artistic projects. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jose Carlos. It's incredibly impossible to stop you all because the material has been super interesting. Also, I know that each one of you can speak for 10 hours in the directions that we would really like to hear. We have little time. What I'd like to do is hand over the mic to both Martin from Ars Electronica and Sergio, and just in trying to wrap why we're here. Right, we're here as far as I'm concerned with two aims. The first aim is just to sort of understand and create a context for Latin American art production, which is the start of which happened in this meeting, and then also to talk about the preservation of that knowledge. And then further in a second panel to talk about the contemporary artists that are working now, making their proposals, which will be the subject of the second panel in a few minutes' time. I want to ask, maybe we start with Martin. Martin, your, the approach for Ars Electronica has always been inclusive, right? You have a large number of Latin Americans gone through your process. Can you share with us what you think a festival such as Ars Electronica can can do or can offer for the kind of retention of this knowledge or for the production of new one?
Well, I just cannot start answering your question even when we have like a few seconds left, but thank you for this deep dive, guys. I mean, that was incredible. If we would be in a competition, I would have lost extremely, but we are not. And that brings me, it's no doubt from our point of view, and also what you said, Raphael, we are seeing this in a holistic we are interested in the entire scene, and for some reason in the last years we always had like appearing very interesting artists coming from your cultural regions, but still I was checking our statistics in the pre-Ars Electronica. Somehow we could do more. And I think that is all about in the next session. But back to your question. We are familiar with what has happened in the Latin American area, and it is unbelievable seeing all these artists again and how pioneering their pieces were. I mean, they were just not some out of thousands, and I can really literally talk every year. We receive about 3,000 submitters from more than 80 different countries. So it is a geopolitical overview, whether you are of what is going on in the world, what the state of technology is, in which culture, and it is such a privilege for us and a big opportunity also for the entire scene that there are existing prices like we do this, or like CIFO-Ars do this, or and so on. I see that in the last years, especially from Argentina or from Brazil, we see, and I don't know why, an increasing number of submitted projects. That is also interesting, closely followed by Mexico. I think we are interested in digging deeper, and we are interested in finding these new pioneers. And this is also the reason why I appear here while a festival is in full swing, because I find it so important that I underline the importance of this phalanx, that this holy circle that you are representing here, but also this phalanx that we are on to create among two cultural tectonical plates that have been there the entire time, but that lacked a little bit in communication. And that is actually the mission. And my God, I'm stealing also Sergio's time. That is our mission. That is hopefully what you guys dig deeper than in the next session. And that is our hope from pre-Ars Electronica, that in the next future, in the next years, we will have more and more perspectives from your cultural backgrounds, because we need this desperately to create an entire big picture of this world. Because what you just, your last slide, Jose Carlos, networks and hybrid collaborations. Everything, every point you highlighted there hits perfectly my aspects, how I wanted to answer Raphael's questions. So we have to keep working on that, and we will do.
Thank you, Martin. Can I recommend, Sergio, is it true that you're going to join us also? The order of events is that we're going to have now the artists panel moderated by Tanya, and then we will all sort of reconvene for a more of a informal networking event where we can actually ask ourselves, how is it that we can help the two big problems that we have in Latin America, which is basically how do we preserve and stop forgetting? How do we produce new work? These are the two questions that I think Ars Electronica and CIFO together can help us try and resolve. I don't know the answers yet, but hopefully after we hear the artists, by the way, we've done something with the artists that is really, really unfair, which is to give them very short amount of time. And I've asked them not only to speak about their own work, but the work of one or two or three of their contemporaries, their colleagues, their squad. And so it's a particularly difficult thing. And I really feel sorry for all of them to try and compress so much information. But that's what we want. We want a panorama so that we get this real expansive profile of what's happening in Latin America. Sergio, would it be okay if you just introduce this new panel and let us know from CIFO's side what you're looking for in this relationship with Ars Electronica?
Okay, first of all, I think we are overwhelmed by all the information that we just got to grasp. I had that same sensation, that same feeling in the previous conversations that we all had. But in this presentation, I think we all remain thirsty and hungry to know about Latin American participation in media art and all that different constellations that Tanya only got to comment, like to show us, just to leave us like expectant. And I think the continuous support of Latin American artists has required from CIFO to reinvent itself in the 20 years that we have been working, creating, solidifying, and evolving this network within the Latin American countries. And I think it's exciting. It's the word that I want to use. It's exciting to see how we can grow and how we can keep helping. And this, especially this collaboration with Ars Electronica, I think and I hope that those two names, CIFO and Ars Electronica, it's a duet that the listeners could keep seeing and reading in the near future. Let's see what the future brings. We're really excited to give Tanya the word to start presenting the second panel. I think we are ready to leave the artists get connected, like from 3 minutes ago. Perfect.
So thank you, all of the previous panelists. You're welcome to stay around to listen to the artists, and then maybe come back to the informal chat after. So we leave it on your hands, Tanya.
Hey everybody, have fun. Ciao, Eduardo.
Thank you.
Hey. How's it going?
Hi, hello.
Good when I see you.
I am super happy to present this panel, and I'm going to be really quick because you, as Rafa have said, have very little time. So I'm very happy to present Tanya Kandiani from Mexico, Amor Muñoz from Mexico, José Carlos Martinat from Peru, Eduardo Cac from Brazil, Iván Abreu from Cuba and Mexico, Oscar Santillán from Ecuador, Patricia Dominguez from Chile, and Marcela Armas from Mexico. I will refer to all of you as media artists, even I know that you are broader practitioners. But if we all agree, let's start with Tanya Kandiani, please. Maybe she's not ready. I can see her in the. Can we wait for Tanya and start with you, Amor?
You're muted. Estás muteada.
Okay. Sorry.
I just want to remind everybody that we are going to listen to the artists, and then they will talk about 3 to 5 or artists that they want to talk about in order to broaden this constellation. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for the invitation. I'm happy to be part of this wonderful table. And my name is Amor Muñoz. I'm a Mexican artist. The maker movement, the do-it-yourself strategies, and open source culture have been important in my development as an artist. My work involves textiles, performance, drawing, sound, and experimental electronics to explore the relationship between technology and society, and in particular, how technology affects fabrication systems and how manual labor and handcrafts are changing in a contemporary global economy. For 10 years, I have explored possibilities of electronic textiles to create different narratives and poetics. I'm interested in change hard circuits in soft circuits and transforming the rigid language of engineering into a soft, tactile, and flexible language. Electricity behaves differently when it flows in a textile material like conductive thread. My first experiments were a series of schematics embroidered by hand with conductive thread and electronics. The drawing was transformed into a machine and the textile into an interactive sound artifact. Here we can see an audio sensor, for example, and here an electronic piano. So in those times, my work had a strong connection with the process of two Chilean artists, Claudia Gonzalez and Constanza Piña. We were all active in the Latin American maker movement, sharing knowledge in workshops and participating in maker fairs. Claudia Gonzalez was exploring paper circuits with different conductive materials to make a series of paper machines that work as musical instruments in artist book with pop-up mechanisms. On the other hand, Constanza Piña was exploring textiles and wearable technology to do performance, working with sound and the human body. This is one of her inventions. This is an amplifier bell. So over time, I have found interesting connections between artisan work and digital tech, text, textile, coding, language, within, memory have been the constellations of my recent work. Nuts and Bolts is an exploration that seeks to relate traditional textile techniques like plissé with encoded music notations for player piano. One reference for this project is Colin Ancaro with his compositions of player piano, connecting the manual and handmade work with the programming. Ancaro could spend a year punching a paper roll in a manual way to have only 10 minutes of music. So that's crazy. Another reference is Morton Feldman, who created a series of musical compositions based on the patterns and color from ancient Persian roofs. Nuts and Bolts is an interactive installation where 3 cylindrical sound sculptures have a cover of plated textiles whose textures are mapped and translated into musical patterns. The public activates the sculptures, approaching the hands to the fabric, making each cylinder rotate at sounds in distinct registers. The piece is a kind of spatial musical instrument in which textile patterns work as a score. Another project related to systems of coding, language, and memory is Matter and Memory. The idea was to create a series of textiles with memory, but not thinking about an anthropological memory. In this case, to think of the textile as a technological memory, as a container of data. The project is inspired in the magnetic core memories of computers of the 50s and the works by Annie Albers about codes. In Latin America, Annie Albers found inspiration in pre-Columbian textiles. For her, these ancient pieces were real coding textiles. Each symbol, each graphic, or tucapu means something. With those references, I create a binary alphabet based on the computing language, zeros and ones, to weaving and encoding secret message that can be decoded by the public, creating with that interaction a kind of data processing in real time in an analog way. I think that now is a good moment to mention two works of two Latin American women artists inspired in Asian computational textiles, the quipus. One work is Quipu, Electrotextiles Pre-Hispanic Computer by Constanza Piña. This piece is an open source textiles computer based on the manufacture on an astronomical quipu. The installation consists of an antenna of 6 meters of diameter that is composed of 180 ropes. Each of them is made with copper wire and alpaca wool. These ropes are connected to an electronic circuit that amplifies and sonifies the electromagnetic changes present at the installation site. Other project is Hanap Pachaquipu by Paola Torres Núñez del Prado. The Hanap Pachaquipu is a textile controller, a soft interface designed with the manner of this data storage system based on ropes and knots from the pre-Columbian times. The interface allows the user to reinterpret and extract from the first polyphonic composition made in America and written in Quechua in the 17th century. The piece makes visible that cultural syncretism of European beliefs and the Indian worldview. Technology exists all over the world. The history of technology is not made only of the sophisticated innovations created in the richest countries. In developing countries, there is a technological history that is also written daily, made of alternative uses and creative contributions of techniques and artifacts. Technodiversity is a concept important created by the philosopher Yu Kui to make visible other knowledge that appropriates contemporary technology with other perspective, with other directions, with a collective sense of social and environmental well-being. During the last years, I have been working in a series of local technology labs with women crafters from different indigenous communities in Mexico. The objective is to create or generate collective work for the solution of local problems through technological appropriation, using solar energy and combining indigenous crafting techniques with open source and new materials. So that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Amor. May we continue with Jose Carlos Martinat from Peru?
Hi. Yes. Let me share the screen. I'm not very sure I'm showing totally my screen. I'm not very skilled with the Zoom sharing thing, but
we can see your screen.
Okay, perfect. So, well, my name is Jose Carlos Martinat. I am a Peruvian artist. I don't have a traditional formation as an artist. I study graphic design. That makes me to start to not having the being my name. Sorry, I'm as a graphic designer. I've been doing artistic projects since 2000. The fact of not having a traditional artistic training led me to experiment with different medias. From the beginning of my career, using traditional media such as sculpture, at the same time using other less conventional media such as ceramic, mechanics, robotics, among others. In 2000, the art scene in Peru was quite traditional. Locally, there was an institution called ATA that support some of the artists working with video or audio. The few artists whose previous work with new media, such as Francisco Mariotti, immigrated from the country from many years ago. At that time, the art scene in Peru was a bit encapsulated locally. Access to information was not fluid as is today. In 1997, internet just arrived in Peru, and it took a while to become popular. No? Some way we were kind of encapsulated in receiving information from the outside. In 2000, I carried out my first artistic project in a very intuitive way, almost due to technical needs in order to achieve different sensations. In the exhibition space, I began to work with movement sensors, with PIRTs, that allow me to mark sensorial reads in the exhibition space. That simple device changed my conception in the development of artistic project. From 2001 to 2003, with the help of different collaborators with training in mechanics and programming, I began to experiment with PLC, lights, motors, sounds, and mic cycling 74. During this period, I carried out a series of projects called stereo reality environments. Stereo reality is a concept coined by Paul Virilio. It was coined approximately in 1998. He mentions that we are beginning to live in a double space, the virtual and the real. And that, as well as the bass and the troubled sounds, give a feeling of deep. We need to work on this new relief in some way. No? The first project was more, the first stereo reality environment project that I made was more a mechanical project where objects were connected to a computer. And this object questioned their functions, his own functions, and their reality. All the actions were predetermined by the computer, by a software, for which I feel that I had not really touched that reality that Paul Virilio spoke about, that gave the rise to this project. No? After
Jose Carlos, sorry to interrupt you. Maybe we are not seeing your slides changing. I don't know if they are changing, or we should see stereo reality environment number 2 now.
Yeah, I want to go into
okay, sorry.
No.
Sorry.
In 2003, in collaboration with Enrique Mayorga, we proposed a stereo reality environment number 2. No, it's a project which we applied for a contest called Life and Arts and Technology. It was a contest run by Telephonic Foundation in Spain. They give us a financial help to carry out this project. This project, unlike the previous one, we were able to find a way to work the work function more in an autonomous way. For a stereo reality environment, we create a software with algorithms that perform autonomous search on the web. We have to keep in mind that this project was made 18 years ago, where the internet was not so developed and all the engine research were not totally developed. The project consists of intervention in the center of Lima. We put in the facade of a building 18 printers, like the printers are in the ATM bank machines. No, all the printers were connected to a computer, and this computer have a software that was connected to one of the principal newspaper of our country called the Comercio. The software was always hacked this website and was running all the time, and was I was attempting to see in which moment a new a new item go inside of this newspaper. So immediately the software recognizes the new come to the newspaper and extract immediately the headline. Extract the headline with the purpose to extract the verb and the subject of the headline. In this way, the software start to make a research of information related on the website. For example, if the headline was "The President promised to export apples," the algorithm recognized the president as the subject, promise as the noun, as the verb, sorry, and immediately put it in the web search, and start to make start to recollect information about that new. It start to extract sentences from different websites and construct paragraphs. All these paragraphs immediately were sent to the streets and start to create this kind of frame of information. In 2004, these web motors were not so developed. So the information that was found or was composed like a paragraph in some moments were very critical about the context that were happening in that moment in the city or probably in the world, no? And some moments the information could have more like a sensation, more poetic in some way, no? There were like a exquisite process falling from the sky. This project always, I have been doing this project for many years since this starting point, and depending where I show it, the shape of the project change, and the same time of the logic of the information that is looked on the website. Then I want to make a kind of bridge of this project that I developed a long time ago, or a new one that I right now doing right now, that works in the same logic in some way, but it's not working this time with image. It's working with images, not with text. No, since the beginning of I started this project last year, in the beginning of the pandemic situation and all the confination that we all suffered. And that moment, many of the cultural events couldn't be done, no, in the physical way. So many of these cultural events have to move to the online or to the virtual way in some way, no? Have to migrate to digital format, especially the contemporary art fairs. Those events that for the many years have marked in a good part the ring of the contemporary art and define what should be considered as a mainstream. These new online fairs allow people for 4 to 5 days to visit hundreds of works. This new project called Fracking 3.0 hacks the art fairs during the short period that works with the purpose of appropriating its visual context. Through the use of algorithms with artificial intelligence, the content of each fair is analyzed in order to create new images, a kind of appropriation 3.0. The purpose of this project is to create an autonomous system that breaks into the virtual fairs, learn to their context, and automatically generates new context that will be automatically displayed in the virtual space under the logic that the blockchain has been deploying in the last couple of years. It's a project. This is some of the image that the program the software is making of the content of the phrase of the fairs. It's a project that in certain way operates in a gray area. On one hand by the appropriation information, and the other hand by transforming art that is consuming by certain elite and is taking to a space with a more communal purpose, as the blockchain is expected to be. This project is going to be launched very soon, and for me, it's like trying to work in a more abstract way, but in a critical way. No? Then I want to show the project of a collective called Fibra. This collective is a Fibra. It's a collective, Peruvian collective, made by 3 Peruvian female artists called Lucilia Monge, Gabriela Flores, and Janine Tapia. This project is a bio-installation can transmit the ruins of the deforestation in Ucayali. Ucayali is one of the 5 regions with the highest amount of deforestation, highest amount of forests in Peru. Ucayali is the area with the highest complaint of illegal deforestation. In 2019, Ucayali have lost, just to have a graphic example, like a 77,000 soccer fields. The project took as a starting point the communication of information exchange network that exists between the root of the plants and the hippie of the fungi. This network is called mycorrhizas. It's also called a wood wide web and works in a very similar way to internet. The installation consists consisting of a series of sculptures co-created with fungi that convey on a zonification of recent data of the deforestation in the Ucayali. The fungi communicate the reality of the trees by turning the showroom into organisms, and they pulse at the same frequencies as the forest.
Sorry to interrupt you, Jose Carlos. We have to stop here, but this is an amazing project. I think we can share some links with the audience in order to further the information. And we have to jump to Eduardo Caco, please.
Hi, I'm going to switch to the presentation. And can you see my screen? Yes?
Yes, great.
Thank you. So my career spans 40 years. So rather than try to offer a summary, I will focus on my most recent work entitled Inner Telescope, which I created in outer space with the cooperation of French astronaut Thomas Pesquet. I was an artist in residence at the French Space Agency for 10 years, trying to implement this work. And in the course of those 10 years, I created a protocol, which you see here on the wall as it was exposed as part of my solo show at the Bienal Sur in Buenos Aires. The insert on the right is a detail of the end of the wall where you see the work being finally assembled and basically let go because it is in zero gravity. I also published an artist book that contains the entire protocol. And here you see Thomas Pesquet floating in zero gravity in the International Space Station after he assembled the work. It's important to say that the work and the materials were not brought from Earth. The work was entirely made in space. So it comes into existence in space. It's made in space. And this is, in addition to the meanings of the work itself, the fact that it's made in space symbolically, it means that moving forward, as we build a space culture, we develop a space culture, just as we develop a digital culture starting in the early 80s, as we develop a space culture, we will be making art in space regularly. So here's a first step, that the work was actually made in space. And you see the work here floating in the cupola with the Soyuz capsule on the left and our home planet on behind us. And here's a different point of view. And according to this point of view, you see that the artwork reveals itself not as language, but rather as a human-like form with the umbilical cord cut, having the Earth in the background. Back on Earth, here you see me and Thomas training at the European Astronaut Center in Cologne in preparation for the realization of this work. I asked Thomas to record video in different ways. I created a protocol for the video as well. On the left, you see the video being projected. And you see that on the right, I created a special container box case with a drawing from a series of drawings for this video. Here you see the screening at the Louvre Museum in Paris in 2018. As I said, I was an artist in residence for 10 years. So throughout those 10 years, I created drawings, photographs. There's a whole series of works that these works, they capture different moments in the evolution of the final inner telescope. So there is a photo series. Here you see, for example, 2 of the 7 that exist in the series as part of my solo show at Enrique Faria Fine Art in New York. There is a drawing series because I created also as part of the dossier that I developed for the French Space Agency to communicate the different modes of experience. I created a whole series of drawings as well. You see here a human experiencing the work in zero gravity. And very quickly, I learned that for every mission in space, there is a patch. So of course, space poetry had to have a patch. On the left, you see the patch on the polo shirt, and on the right, you see it on the cover of another artist book that I published. This put me in contact with embroidery, which is a medium that I had never worked with before, and I fell in love with embroidery. So I created a series of embroideries as part of the Inner Telescope series. Here you see the complete series. And if you look at the first one on the left, there is a rocket going up. And the last one on the right, the hand opens and the work lifts off. So the series of embroideries seeks to convey different moments in the evolution and transformation of this work. This is the one I mentioned, for example, with the rocket lifting off. And here you see the viewer participant with the 2 sheets of paper creating the work in outer space. So that is all for me, focused on Inner Telescope. I will now switch to mention a few artists from Brazil. And the first one I am going to mention is Kahulus Fadon. And I selected, all these artists have also long careers with a lot of different directions, but I selected 2 works by Carlos from 1986 because he started to work with digital imaging and digital photography so early. And I wanted to illustrate some of the directions that his work took in the beginning. And of course, there's a lot more that follows that. Another artist that I want to mention is Mário Ramiro. Mário Ramiro has worked with sculpture and photography and other media as well. But what, in a sense, what drives all his work is his interest for invisible forces. In this particular case, heat. He has worked extensively with heat. And these images are Schlieren photographs in which heat is rendered visual. And then he juxtaposes that with images of himself. In this case, for example, on the right, the big fall. The third artist I wish to mention is Giselle Begeman, also a prolific career, many different works and directions. But I am selecting here one of her earliest pieces, which is a piece of NetArt. I'm showing one screen from a work that whatever you click, it takes you in different directions and it keeps unfolding in different ways. But one slide will, for the moment, suffice to at least signal the existence of this body of work. And the last artist I am going to mention is Otávio Donassi, who is a performer who has hybridized electronic images for the face and the human body for the other part of his creatures, creating these hybrid video creatures that perform in many different ways. And that is my presentation.
Thank you, Eduardo Cac. May we continue with Patricia Dominguez, please? Thanks.
And thank you. Thank you for the invitation. It's very amazing to be with all these colleagues and meet them in the digital life. I'm going to show a constellation that I put together of some images of my projects and the other artists I will present. So I'm going to be reading while I'm some ideas that have been resonating, and also allowing some moments of silence while I scroll down. So, sorry to be the paper. Be like a little manifesto of ideas, and I'm going to talk about specific projects. So, my work explores the hazy cross-pollination of healing rituals emerging from the intersection of multiple worlds through colonial and neoliberal encounters, with a metamorphic practice that spans in video installations, sculptures, watercolors, painting, and texts. My work tries to unearth the impacts of advanced capitalism on the body and post-colonial rituals for working it through living within Chile. I'm actually an artist, of course. Understanding these processes as intertwined cosmologies that are deeply embedded within the extracted landscapes, the collective cultural memory of pre-Columbian South American thought, ethnobotanical traditions, and multi-species relationships in the digital age. What I try to do with my work is a ritual to survive the current context. That's why I use elements with which I generally have contradictory relationships, like LED mask, plastic, to rethink and rework them with the artistic rituals that I do in order to continue living in this capitalist system. My current understanding of ritual is that they are the language of the spirit, the language of dreams, and they are the way that we can move information in a psychic level. This is the video that I did with the privatization of water in Chile in 2020. So, following the traces of symbols and cultural objects as they enter the digital grounds and come back to the physical world transformed, the movement that I perform is similar to the material hacking exercise. If the digital corporatism operation implies turning what is alive into pixels, stripping it all traces of planetary and ancestral memory, my movement is the opposite. I materialize what is digital in order to connect it with memory. What I do is to change the priority with which we relate to certain consumer objects, supercharged objects with heavy genealogies, by giving them a sacred ordering. In the sacred, in my sense, has nothing to do with religion, but the sacred for me is the living, what is common, and what is planetary memory. I see my work as a stomach that digests reality, and my strategy is one of recoding capitalism through an invented artistic language, a digestion system that absorbs and transmutes from the force of the oniric, past and present materialities and symbols to project new arrangement of the present and possible futures. I seek to establish alliances between the living, mixing and trying to generate new images and relationships with these elements with which we are already in contact. Each element that passes through my work encapsulates information that is moved and rearranged in the projects. Through these equations, I reorganize situations and histories, personal, family, even national, on a symbolical level. By rearranging the material, somehow the invisible is also rearranged. My futurism is analog, is low tech. Rather than having technological utopias, I prefer to learn to activate our organic and biological technologies. Besides, projecting possible futures in the work helps to open possibilities and through imagination, redefine what we have available. These are some watercolors that I have been doing with organic and technologies. I have been using a lot the color green. For me, the green is the color of the hologram of the vegetable world. And although we might not be able to live in the forest, in the jungle, in the desert, it's a color that represents a portal in connection to that beings. I was in Bolivia when the apocalypse started for me in 2019. A fire in the Bolivian Chiquitanía, the civil strike due to the crisis of Evo Morales, and the social outbreak in Chile, and then the pandemic. A week before the lockdown due to the civic strike began in Bolivia, that year I went to buy a hammock. There were hundreds of them, and I was thinking which one to buy. I began to talk to the man that sold them, who told me about the color green. I told him that I wanted to have a green one, and then he told me that that's the color of the living, or that's the color of nature. And then when living in the city, this is a technology because the color keeps us sane, because it brings us the energy of the jungle to our beings. There's an exudation, I think that's the word, of the green that we cannot see, but if we have it near us, it bring us closer to us, all this energy by association. So for me, using the green is like actualizing a possible botanical practice, but through plant energy expressed in a color, in a light. For me, the green is a multi-species color. And also recently, I also learned that this color is at the center of the human range of vision. So it's a technology that I see to bring us to the center of our centers. I'm gonna shortly show a video. This video is called, there's some slides, Isoplants. So in this video, the flow of information and history is realized through water, tears and saliva, the lifeblood of both plants and humans that share tears of a drone and a jarropato. Jarropato is a Diaguita indigenous base from the north of Chile that cries. And also talking about the rapidly privatizing natural resources in Chile in the desert, liquids which contain histories, which remember and heal, which bring species together and unite us all. I speculated on a kind of botanic futurism that weaves together family stories and a collective cultural mythology. I was led to speculate on the symbolic and aesthetic overlap of the jarropato maximalist patternation of identity, consisting in zigzags, ripples, and chain links, and the designs of contemporary business shirts as a kind of psychic amulet for micromanaging the cosmic evils of capitalism. Then this is another video. Long. These are some shots of Madre Drone, which I did when I was in the apocalypse in Bolivia in that year. So it consists on intersecting worlds of a wake of natural destructions and protest movement in Bolivia and Chile. A woman's naked, shading her serpentine coat into a neon dreamscape of a rainforest to reveal a green laser encounters a robot boy, which is this. This is the kind of old vintage handmade robot with a kid inside, trapped into the machine. So the kid is there. A drone's view of a rainforest bisected with a curving asphalt morph into a vernal forest obscene with a raging fire. So at the same time that this was happening, the Chiquitanía was burning at the same time. Halfway through the film, we encounter a toucan blinded in one eye by the Amazonian fires. A 3D model of its wounded vision floats above the glossy facade of a corporate building high-rise. Followed by a pair of human eyes brandishing the same wound, this time as a result of the brutal police repression that we have been going through in Chile by the hands of the state since the same year. By the loss of vision, a clairvoyant power gestates. By losing their eyes, they have transformed into vision machines, perceiving beyond what is visible, suggests the voiceover as the video cuts the original footage from the student protests in Chile, where protesters use hundreds of lasers to bring down the police spy drones. During the protest, I was looking at the lasers used to take down the police drone, and I was seeing the drone as a new power animal, a floating eye over the earth, this amazing being that is spying on us at the same time. Even if it represented the police and incarceration, I wanted to have its pixelated vision. Inverting power structures and rethinking conditions of empowerment is important. Even if it's solely like imagination, we need a form of new vision, a new system that works for everybody, a pixelated organic vision. This is the altar that I put together for the video. So fighting back against a regime that blinded many of the citizens for human and not, in protest and vast ecological destruction, my work reorders and re-encodes these systems into a speculative altar, an alternative vision of cosmic interconnectedness, an eye for an eye, and then maybe something new. Colonial, environmental, and social trauma runs through the projects from the codes of mourning and crying, connecting the viewers with the collective memories and social conflicts. And speaking about biological technologies, I chose 3 artists, really good friends that we have been in resonance for a long time. So the first one is Julian Du Pont and his work. I don't know if you guys know it. He's amazing artist.
Sorry, Patricia. Colombia. Sorry, we have run out of time. So can you just mention their names? Is it okay? And we share the links up.
Okay, so it's Julian Du Pont and Clara Melnichenczuk. They collaborated with the UAIN, the Universidad Autónoma Indígena Intercultural in Colombia. Then Nicole Julier, also from Chile. And Guadalupe Maravilla from El Salvador and New York. I just want to show the images. I thought it was okay. Oh, so sad I couldn't talk about the works. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and sorry for the timer. And let's continue, please, with Oscar Santillan from Studio Antimundo. Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, everyone, and it's really great to be here in such a fantastic company of colleagues that I admire. I've been wishing to speak to for a long time. So let me start by sharing this presentation. And so I'm going to start by saying a few words about an idea that is at the very foundation, I would say, of my practice, which is the idea of antimundo. By antimundo, I refer to the shadows of modernity. Basically, everything that has been that has happened in the shadow of that great achiever of modernity, the large speed of communications, the amazing speed of first the train, then the car, then the airplanes, and so on and so forth. So to be clear about this, so what I mean by antimundo, you could say is the following. So let's think of modern science. It has happened that we have come to somehow believe that when we say the word science, we often imply modern science. And somehow it has become embedded in our language, in our understanding of different ways of knowing the world, that the capital letters way of knowing the world is modern science. And I want to get away as well from any kind of like binary understanding of reality or a kind of binary criticism. For me, it is important to make clear that modern science has created is one of the sources of well-being and simultaneously of destruction for humanity. So it has this incredible paradox in itself, and that's the power of it in a way. But what has happened is that we have forgotten that there are different ways of practicing science, and that modern science is not the only way. It's one that is one among many indigenous ways of knowing the world. In other ways, all systematic ways of knowing the world are scientific. So under that premise, there are many scientific ways of knowing the world that are non-modern. You know, and also something that has happened to me, so I have become more and more skeptical about my own ideological mantras, my own ways of connecting or connecting to reality or understanding reality. And one of the ideas that has become very important to me is the notion of the future. And where can we find the future? And I suspect that criticizing the West is not going to get us very far. We definitely need other ways of knowing, other ways of interpreting, and other ways of acting that are non-modern. And here is where the future is in the past and is in the present. So indigenous worlds, which are contemporary worlds, is not a picture of the past or a kind of archaeological piece from the past. Indigenous worlds are among the most vibrant worlds or ways of shaping our reality. Show us in its infinity versions that there are many futures that we have forgotten about. And when I'm thinking about the future, I'm often thinking about what I mean by the future is not necessarily what is ahead of us, because I cannot make any prediction about the weather tomorrow. But what I can be aware of is that the future is basically every past that has been neglected, every past that has been destroyed has a potential future. So the future is everywhere. And from this notion of antimundo, I'm going to start, I'm going to move towards a little way of the path that has led me to some of these ideas. I used to be one of those, as many colleagues, as many curious people, I used to be very fascinated by European explorers going to Latin America, like fantastic people like Humboldt. And this is a piece from, it's a series that I started in 2008. This is a work from 2012, 2013 called Lost Star, where I work in collaboration with a chemist. And the ink from this original edition, this is the second edition, I believe, from the 19th century of this Humboldt's book. So the ink through a chemical reaction was removed from the paper and then turned into this miniature. But I started also doubting, kind of questioning myself, why is it that when I want to speak about science, I end up always going to these big references, or at most speaking about Europeans that have traveled to Europe. So then I started wondering, who were the first scientists, Latin American scientists, that traveled, did international travels or international expeditions outside of Latin America? Like, who were those that did the opposite travel as Darwin or Humboldt? And I ended up encountering this really fascinating story about the 1874 astronomical expedition, where 5 Mexican astronomers traveled to Japan in order to conduct astronomical observations. And this is very interesting. This is a monument that celebrates this event, and it is in Japan, in Yokohama. It is, funny enough, it's not in Mexico. So this also tells a lot about how, in Latin America, we have so many different monuments. We are not lacking monuments in Latin America, but somehow our monuments tend to speak about these kind of dramatic, nationalistic, patriarchal ways of looking at history. And we need other histories in Latin America. I truly believe this. And from that research, so I traveled to Japan, I went to Mexico, started researching about this astronomical expedition. I developed this work called Planetarium. And Planetarium, in collaboration with scientists at the Leiden Astronomical Observatory in the Netherlands, we replicate, and also collaborating with a ceramist in Cuenca in Ecuador, we created these replicas of the soil of planet Venus. And by now we have created replicas of the soil of Venus, the soil of Mars, the moon, and well, other planets. And now we are thinking on expanding our replicas. These are exact replicas of the chemical composition of these other planets. And then we turn it into ceramics. This is one of the pieces of that series. This is called Planetarium. And this is an exact replica of the soil of Venus that is mounted on this astronomical mount and is continuously looking at planet Venus. I know the clock is ticking, so I'm just gonna mention this for a minute. This is a piece where I started looking back into those expeditions to the Amazon. I came across this 1976 archaeological and geological expedition to a cave in the Amazon on the Ecuadorian side, and this is a piece called Gum Codex. I ended up tracking down a piece of chewing gum chewed by Neil Armstrong during that expedition. Neil Armstrong was one of the scientists who was part of that expedition. So he traveled to the Amazon. And this an Ecuadorian soldier who was part of that expedition gathered a piece of gum, bubble gum, chewed by one of the most famous people in the world back then, Neil Armstrong, who 7 years prior had stepped on the moon's surface. And the family of this Ecuadorian soldier had saved this piece of chewing gum. So I had worked with geneticists, and we have developed this. This is a project where all the genetic information in that piece of chewing gum had been put into these plants. So it's a new ecology of the Amazon, inspired at the same time by the aesthetics of the International Space Station that orbits around planet Earth. And finally, I just want to speak now about, for a minute, about a platform that with other colleagues we have put together called Orbitat. So please take a look whenever you have time. And it's really a wonderful, I had the wonderful opportunity to collaborate and co-create this platform with the colleagues Ana Maria Rat, the artist Ana Maria Gomez Lopez, and the artist Ricardo Cuello. And there we continuously are bringing science fiction writers from Latin America, scientists from Latin America, and artists who are interested in the dialogue of art and science, like Alan Poma. This is someone who I deeply admire, Paula Olaik-Sarak, and this is a novel of hers that I cannot recommend enough. And finally, my colleague Elimo Eliseo, with whom we've been working in the company of artist Paula Torres Núñez, making an adaptation of a 1938 sci-fi piece from Guatemala called La Mujer y el Robot. And this is an adaptation on video that we've been working on for the past 2 years. And
sorry, Oscar, we have to close.
Yeah.
Sorry. Well, let's continue, please, with Tanya Kandiani.
Hi, how are you? I'm super happy to be part of this panel with all the colleagues. I'm going to start right now sharing my screen for the presentation, which is here. Optimize for video clip, share sound, share. Okay, can you see my presentation? Yes? Okay.
Yes.
Well, language has been present in my work since I thought I would become a writer. Instead, I turned out a sort of translator, where translation can be understood as a way of decoding instructions, binary codes, diagrams, notations, choreographies. Everything is translatable into sound. Like the way the instructions in a punched card from a Jacquard loom can be read with light and sing. The first devices that I recreate were sound generators, singing language machines, tensing the voice that narrates as much as the systems that listens. Listening is the counterpart of sound generator machines. Ambient sound is all around us, from buzzing insects to airplane overhead. Our days are filled with noises, yet there is so much more we cannot hear. Animals, for instance, can pick up lower and higher frequencies than humans, and each animal has its own hearing range. For the animals, my more recent project, I created experimental musical scores intended as lullabies for the bobcat, the Mexican gray wolf, coyote, the red fox, javelina, jaguar, kit fox, and the coati at frequencies audible to each of these animals. I focused on the balance between organism and their sonic environment through listening. Listening as a manner of communicating with other species. Using a variety of acoustic inputs. The starting point of the whole for the animals project and research was a geological formation that it looked as a speaker, the hole in the rock. Immediately when I saw that rock, I thought that as a huge speaker. The Hohokam tribe used the hole in the rock as a sun watch station. They tracked the position of the sun rays on the chamber floor through the year and marked the summer solstice and equinoxes by grinding a mark where the light fell in a denser stone. What makes hole in the rock special as well is its prominence in the desert landscape, its deep color, its stubborn resistance to weathering and erosion, and the physical phenomenon called taphony that has carved all those holes and windows into the rock. I was interested in the historical aspects of the hole in the rock as well and its physical form. And I also realized that the Phoenix Zoo in Arizona was next door at that the Sonoran animal habitat was clearly seen from inside the hole in the rock. In the image, you can see the hole in the rock place and where the animals live in the zoo. So I wondered how I might create sound-based experiences from the site. Specifically, I desired to produce a concert for the animals of the Sonoran Desert. With this artistic and sonic gesture, I also wanted to bring attention on how the ancient migration patterns of this native region has been interrupted by the physical border wall. We located a portable water station and other measuring instruments at the top of the rock and collected data in different moments of the year. The data was then sonified and became the material for the lullabies. Also, the data was used to create an electroacoustic instrument, el percutor, and I don't know how to translate the percutor, is like the percussion instrument that maybe, so this musical instrument uses that data to control the movements of a solenoid array. When the solenoid array touches the rock surface, it generates vibrations. Microphones then sample these vibrations and amplify the signal coming from the rock surface. The rock's signal is sent to a mixer and processed with sound filter effects. Is the surface of the rock singing live? But I wanted the rock singing closer to the animals, so we worked in the development of the Scout Station, which is that little fake rock in the middle of the photo. Scout Station seeks to attract mammals by emitting an audible call in the form of sounds in a frequency range that they can hear. The calls were generated with the data collected from the hole in the rock formation. Scout Station also collects data on its surroundings through 4 thermal detectors oriented towards north, east, south, and west locations. When motion detectors perceive movements, the software is able to scan and identify any animals. Scout Station, if an endangered species is found, a video recording is made along with data of the immediate surroundings. All data is stored in log files that, along with the video and sounds, are saved onto the USB drives. And this information helps track the movement and migration patterns of endangered species. The material recorded in the Scout Station was the spinal column of the video installation for the animals. Once again, language was a common thread that interweaved questions and thoughts about how we humans and many other living organisms acquire, process, and respond to information from their environment, thereby augmenting and enriching our perception and cognition. Through a visual and narrative script, I propose to experience and moving through ecosystem and times where sound, image, and words works as the interface for expanded perception and cognition in the yearning to understand ourselves into the other. For the animals explores the concept of the Umwelt, the world as perceived by another non-human living organism based on its sensory capacities. How will the world look, smell, sound, feel if you were to become the other? The imbricated relationship between natural phenomena and forms of sentient communication, from birds and whales songs to more abstracted form of human representation, such as the descriptive system implicated in text and diagrams, posed an urgent question. As animals inhabit a world that we also occupy, change, and oftentimes destroy, can we alter our senses and our cognitive dominance to give space to their waves of making reality? I'm going to play a fragment of this video.
The planet itself teems with a vigorous resonance. Expansive, expensive, delicate, aggressive, balance, unknown. A population of animals. A concert hall. And everywhere. A unique orchestra performs an unmatched symphony. Each species sound entering into the score. A highly evolved, naturally wrought, a masterpiece. Then we arrived, we humans, with limited language skills to express what we feel. Then we borrow some lenguaje to convey emotion. Modern humans trying to convince the other creatures that they are all just an extension of one sonorant family. Trying to enter the tuning of the great animal orchestra, to be welcomed into the acoustic harmony of the wild. A revelation.
And I want to introduce two artists that I love very much, that are my friends, and I admire them a lot. I met Maro Pebo, Mariana Perez Bobadilla, aka Maro Pebo, when she was writing her thesis on artists and artworks related with the history of science. She became a close collaborator during the production of my project 5 Variations on Phonic Circumstances and a Pause in Laboratorio Arte Alameda in 2012. From then, we worked together in different levels of interchange. Weaving collaborations, Maro Pebo works on defying anthropocentrism and on skeptical environmental accountability. Her transdisciplinary works subverts the monopoly of life science to think biological matter and aims to release the indiscipline of living cells. Maro Pebo specialized in the intersections of art, science, and biotechnology. Her current interest lies in microorganism cultures and microbial post-human turn. Her project, Microbial Emancipation, aims at materializing the well-known fact that the relationship between human and microbial life is deeper than a host-guest relationship. In the deep past, the mitochondria was an independent living bacteria that became our mitochondria, the energy source of eukaryotic cells. As microbial emancipation presents the narrative of the violent extraction of the mitochondria, involuntary emancipation to prove this relationship, and it aims to transform our understanding of the place of microbes and humans in the world. Next is... Sorry.
We have to stop here. I'm sorry, but well,
I 9:57. 1 minute. Just Leslie, very quickly. Leslie and her collective interspecific, and just this latest project that they have, which is very new, which is called Transient Hypofrontality Tools, and they seek to create an schema, an ontology of altered state of consciousness. And just one line, please. Is a statement from Leslie. And if we consider today the world is in a state of convulsion, where trauma is generalized and permanent, how can the experience of art facilitate, feed, or trigger ASC states, which can help increase the feeling of interconnectivity and dissociation of the self? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And let's continue with Ivana, please.
Okay, let me share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, I'm happy to be here. Thanks to CIFO-Ars Electronica and Rafa for this invitation. All these tasks are part of my artistic process, but in this case, I'm going to focus in sound art. And the first project that I'm going to share is this device. This device is, let me play. Is a sound sculpture that read the flippy there when you flip in books, and become this in sound landscape in tornado. The next project is a markup language. I created this markup language in 2003 and add metadata to text, art text, to produce some intelligibility for computer process. And with this code, I create different pieces. For example, this sequencer become grammatic structure and the meaning of some word in sounds. Let's listen it. It's about the solidification, data, and visualization. Yeah, right. The next project is I am a certain obsession with sequencer, and in this project is acoustic project, but the process is algorithmic thinking. I create a piece to the interpreter, and the listener is the driver, and the sound is the alarm sound of military band in Mexico. The next project is Sound Sculpture 2. Is a device inspired in turntable, and this device read the interior of architecture, and become this in instrument, electronic instrument to do experimentation. The next project is a recent project. I working now in live cinema and using the cinema like surface and interface. And in this case, I read the content of the image to impact the composition process for experimental sounds. Finally, I got to present 3 artists. The first artist is Abel Castro. I'm interested in artists that work with sound, but the focus is not only attend not only the process. I'm interested in the result and the quality of the result. In this case, Abel Castro from Peru use wearable technology and devices, but control in really fine way these noisy devices for experimentation. The next artist is a Mexican artist, Rogelio Sosa. He is a great composer and transdisciplinary artist too. And I like the result, the sound result of his researches. You know? And finally, I want to present Malixin Cortez. Malixin Cortez is an artist that I admire very much. Is my wife. Is a great artist. And this piece is a VR piece. She's like other digital artists, architects, and she's interested in speculative architecture. And in this case, she created a project about environment problem and dystopian present, point at the coffin houses, the house typically in Hong Kong or Mexico, in really insane situation, you know? and create this VR project with video game engine.
Son ya más de 20 países votando a favor de los cazadores. Ahora debe seguir una larga lista de reglas de registro, compra y venta. El objetivo es regular y legalizar.
Sorry, Ivan, we have to stop now, but we don't have what?
Okay, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's all. Thank you.
Let's continue with Marcela Armas, please. Welcome, Marcela.
Thank you, Tanya. Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here and sharing this space with all of you. I will start with a short synopsis of my artistic work. First of all, I will share the screen. I have to say that I was kind of brave, so I made a video file, and I'm not sure. My test was not very well, so I hope you can see something. You will tell me. Can you see?
Yes.
Sí, Marce. Can you listen to me?
Yes.
Yes. Well, the first decade of this century, I began exploring certain effects, consequences, and reflections of the exploitation of crude oil, the euphoria of its combustion and its becomings in this paradigm that was or continues to be in agony, modern urbanization. Thus, some of my early works were inspired by ancient machines, simple and compound archaic technological artifacts of West. I was interested in building machines that offered mirror images of our collective psyche in relation to the paradigm of progress, allegories of the inoperative modes of politics and society, highlighting the contradiction of domination and control over nature, its biocultural diversity and human freedom. Thus, some of these works seek to display critical images of the model of what is not renewable, the unlimited spending, and the hegemony of waste. While depictions of the corrupt or perverse human side, these works attempt to expose the expiration of this dominant model, the absurdity, its dangerousness, and in some collapse and catastrophe as an inexorable fate. Intuitively and in processes of collaboration and transdisciplinary and transmedial dialogue, I entered the dimension of the geological, exploring the mineral materiality of the world. Along with Arcangelo Constantini, my colleague and dear friend, in Milpa Polymera, we think about the crossroads that ancestral free technologies face. For example, the domestication of seeds with historical and cultural value, such as corn in Mexico, and the figure of the milpa, an ancient farming method that preserves the importance of sustaining diversity as a force for the continuity of life. Thus, in contrast with technologies that were born free and then moved to the logic of private property and patents, appropriating the knowledge of communities of the developers or farmers to lead to close profitable technologies or infertile seeds. Chimeras that constitute an attack against our Mother Earth. I have also gotten closer to Earth by reading her geological files, which put the human time scale in perspective and political boundaries over and above natural ones such as mountains or great rivers. Implant is a work that proposes an exchange of land between Mexico and United States through technologies and knowledge for geological exploration, raising questions about the way we humans relate to land in ecological, economic, political, social, and racial terms, and also showing an imaginary future of two migrant lands displaced and implanted far from their place of origin. Following the traces of other types of geological records, Sideral is a co-work with Gilberto Esparza in collaboration with Diego Liedo and Daniel Yermali. Sideral proposes sonic interpretations of the magnetism found in the surface of meteorites from different places in the world. Readings of the magnetic phenomenon sought as an active recording of events that have taken place outside the Earth or in its encounter. We have been able to get close to meteorites such as Adargas in Mexico, Cañón Diablo in Berlin, Vauxhall in Glasgow, and recently Bacubirito at the Museo Materia in Sinaloa, Mexico. Sideral proposes the construction of instruments with hybrid technologies, analog and digital, to create spaces mediated by sound, allowing to appreciate the closeness to these mineral entities from other worlds. To close with my work, I will talk about Sinamekuta, a project that takes as object of investigation a magnetic mineral called pyrrhotite, found in one of the largest copper producing mines in Mexico, located at the center of the country. This 150 years old mine has displaced an important ceremonial center of the Wixárika people, one of the indigenous community who keep a large part of their traditions alive, practicing their ancestral pilgrimage through these sacred territories threatened by destructive industries. The project proposes the activation of a sound instrument created for ceremonial purposes at the extraction site, with the permission and accompaniment of members of the Wixárika community. This work continues my research on magnetic properties of minerals, their sound interpretation, and in this case, their possibilities for preserving bioelectric signals through the phenomenon of magnetic induction. Thus, the electrical signal from 2 human hearts was recorded in the rock by magnetic induction as a representation of an offering of payment that must be left at the site where the ceremony is held, according to the tradition of the Wixárika people. The project is awaiting completion with the return of the rock offering to the interior of the mountain from where it was taken in loan. Sinamekuta proposes an ethical consideration of the mineral world and a repositioning of the technological object and the intention of its use, recover the dimension of the sacred, taking into consideration the knowledge and approval of native communities. Well, now I will switch to different screen to talk about 2 artists I want to share with you. So let me, oh, sorry. Okay, I cannot move this. Well, I will present Daniel Godínez Nibón, a Mexican artist born in Mexico City in 1985. In recent years, Godínez Nibón has devoted himself to researching tequio, an ancient form of communal work, as well as the forms of situated indigenous knowledge. So I will make a reference of one of his works. I wanted to mention 2 of them, but I don't know if I have enough time. So I will mention the first one is Onerical Propedeutic from 2017. It was part of a transdisciplinary research action program called Liminal Zones, which explored art as an agent of change in situation of social vulnerability. This program was developed through curatorial processes and workshops where pieces, objects, and files are produced that reflect on the multiple relationships between teaching and learning. In 2015, the artist Daniel Godínez Nibón was invited to generate a work of art with the teenagers in the orphanage Jolia. The final piece consists of the creation of a sculptural installation located in a specific mountain known as Iztaccíhuatl. Iztaccíhuatl in Nahuatl is a word that means a sleeping woman. So this installation represents a garden of fossilized plants that had been dreamed for a year and a half of work. The ornerical propedeutic retakes strategies of teaching and learning of the traditional midwifery exercised in dreams. The work sessions consist of meetings on Sundays in Jolia, the place where the girls live, and Wednesday in a collective dream. The installation consists of the creation of a garden of pottery and ash plants that was dreamed by a group of young primary school girls. Furthermore, each plant is made to last for 5,000 years in order that the dream garden is integrated to the sleeping woman, Iztaccíhuatl. My
Sorry,
second
Marcia, we have to close.
But well, I just give you a name. Well, she is Dora Bartilotti. Is a feminist and multimedia artist, and I cannot say anything more. I cannot hear you, Rafa.
What we're going to do is next we're going to move into a more bigger discussion, and so there may be a chance to do that. Also underlining that all of the references that you guys have made will be in a collection of links that we will publish together with the final YouTube recording of the session. So all of the research that you have done and you have presented will be available to people that way.
Great.
Thank you, everybody, for this wonderful constellation of pieces and your work. It's amazing.
It's a crime to cut you short, because you guys are like a dream team of incredible artists, very diverse, so many different disciplines covered, and such an encyclopedic depth of knowledge. I want to invite everybody in this panel, plus the people in the panel before, to join us in the networking session, which starts right now. The link for those who are speakers here is in the Zoom, and we'll see you there in 30 seconds. Okay, we'll continue it on the other side.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Chao.